Hello, everyone. I am here with my good friend, Soul Fam, Tah Whitty,
That's me.
who is an amazing intimacy coach, psychedelic integration. You want to fill it
Emotional
in,
navigation.
emotional navigation.
Yeah.
And really, he is next level at supporting people in understanding themselves better and feeling more connected with who they are and the people in their lives and with their business and so many things. Tah is someone that has helped me immensely on my journey, and I do not say that lightly. I literally would not be the woman I am today, and I really mean that, if it wasn't for Tah's role in my life and the support he has provided me. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Stephanie. You are a tremendous part of my life and an
Mm.
inspiration to me as I watch you grow and take the things that we've spoken about, that you've actually come up with these things yourself. I just know how to ask really powerful questions that bring things out of people. And
Mm.
so the things that are there are already there. They've been coming up to the surface. And to watch you take the things that have come up and actually apply them and expand yourself and support other people in expansion has been one of my greatest inspirations in my life. And I know I share that with you all the time. You're a huge inspiration to me. And
Mm.
it's wonderful to have a space where I inspire you, you inspire me. I inspire you, you inspire me. And we have an
Mm.
ecosystem, and it's just this flow that goes back and forth, round and round, and we
Mm.
continue it. So it's been wonderful to witness you. And what I do is I'm an integration coach and an intimacy coach, and I work deeply in emotional navigation. And I believe that everything about us is woven into a space of emotion because
Mm.
emotions are signals that guide us. So that's what I'm about.
I love it. And I thank you for all of those reflections,
Mm-hmm.
making me blush.
Girl, come on, bring it.
um, yeah. And you are just like, you're a master at supporting people in the way that you do. I don't even know how you do it so well. Like it's like, I learned so much from the way that you break things down. Like if I'm in a process and I'm like going through my shit and I talk to you, and the way that you're able to like see it all and navigate it, and in the questions that you ask and all of that supports me in seeing it and being able to navigate it, it's like unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Well, thank you for that reflection. A large part of I attribute a large part of how I'm able to navigate things because of the traumatic circumstances I've experienced in my life and the 25 years of clinical nursing. I've been a registered nurse for a long time,
Mm.
and I spent a lot of that time in New York City in emergency rooms for 23 years, working a night shift in
Mm.
emergency rooms. And so I had to learn to navigate my nervous system, and I had to learn to navigate my emotions by myself, because the psychology that I was taught in nursing and the psychology that I was taught, period, in college and all of these things it didn't support me in being in my emotional spaces. It supported me in being in mental spaces.
Mm.
And so we talk a lot about mental health in our world. We don't talk a lot about emotional wellness, right? And so they coincide with one another. All of our emotions are driven by thought. And once we can see that they're driven by thought and that our thoughts can be influenced by things, we can influence our own thoughts and therefore influence our emotional well-being. And so this has been a space of play for me. It's been a space of exploration in seeing how the linguistics, the words that I use, actually trigger people to open themselves up in different ways and bring thoughts to the surface that may be buried in the self.
Mm.
And so when those thoughts come to the surface and I see how the physical body responds or how the emotional complex responds, it triggers me to ask another question, to either go deeper. And I'm always in a radical consent space, to either go deeper, leave it alone, or move into a different space, depending on where the person wants to go. And it's almost like I see things in this grid, like it's a grid of perception, and it includes my eyesight, and it also includes my physical sensations, how I detect the temperature in the room around me, and all these things. So I have this amazing way of perceiving things, and some of it I attribute to when I was growing up. I used to trip over things all the time,
Mm.
trip and fall and bump into stuff, and people called me a klutz and all of this. And when I went to, I had told my mother at one point, I was wearing glasses, and I told my mother at one point that I can't see beyond the frame. Like I can't see outside of the frame of my glasses. And so we went and saw a doctor, and the doctor told me that I had something called retinitis pigmentosa. And they told me that I'd be blind by the time I was 40. And my eyesight was closing in, my periphery was closing in. And so since my periphery was closing in, I started to figure out new ways to perceive and see things because I thought I was going to be blind. And so I started to tap into my senses a lot deeper. And so I started to see that my eyesight is very pixelated. Like when I'm not sure if you remember I'm sure you do, the old TVs with UHF, when you would turn it on, it's a snowy screen. Like everything is a derivative of that snowy screen, but I can see all the pinpoints of all these different parts together in an eyesight space, but I can also perceive it in a feeling space. And so I'm able to dial into people's spaces in ways that are really, really interesting. And so what I teach people is how to actually dial into themselves in ways that kind of mimic the way that I've been doing it. So
that's fascinating. And I like that you mentioned that all emotions come from thoughts.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you shared at EmotionALL was that the thoughts are not as important as the emotions that are signaling ease and dis-ease.
Right. Well, I mean, the thoughts are important because they can tell us.
Or I guess I phrased, but the emotions are the ones that are signaling what's going on. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. So EmotionALL was a weekend that we did for emotional navigation, and diving into emotions and navigating emotions is my space. I've often been told, and a lot of people come to me saying that they want to control or regulate or stop or have some semblance of direction in their emotions, and they don't realize that the thoughts that they have and the influence that they have around them is influencing the emotional space. So emotions, from the context that I work, when I work with people, is that there's signals that tell you one of two main things, whether you're in ease or dis-ease. And so people will say that health is the opposite of dis-ease, and it's not. Health for me is and I'm a nurse. I've been working in healthcare for a long time. Disease is the opposite of ease, right? And so you can move from dis-ease to ease. And so all of your negative emotions, right, with anger, frustration, anything, sadness, all of these will tell you that you're in a dis-ease space or moving towards the dis-ease space. Happiness, joy, content, all of the easy stuff tell you that you're moving towards ease. All of the pleasant, or what people will call positive emotions, tell you that you move there. And in between ease and dis-ease, we have health, right? And so my health can be easy or dis-easy. And so when I look at that space, I'm able to gauge where I am. And so when we look at illnesses, like when people have cancer or people have jacked up gallbladder, whatever it is that's going on with a person, that's an illness. And so dis-ease usually leads down the pathway towards illness. And you're usually in dis-ease for a long time before it manifests as an illness. And I'm not just talking about things like infections and stuff like that. I'm talking about illnesses, mutations of the body, and all of that stuff. That's where we find dis-ease moving into illness. But when we're in the easy space, that's where the body remedies itself. It feels nice. That's when the body rejuvenates itself. That's when it feels good. That's why it feels wonderful, because our body, our organism is telling us to stay in that space. And so our emotions are telling us one of those two things. I'm in ease, moving towards ease. I'm in dis-ease, moving towards dis-ease. And so that's how I gauge it. And that's what I teach people in emotional navigation. Anytime somebody has an emotional situation, I ask them to own it, right? Oh, I came up with something. The aliens told me something. So the aliens give me stuff, or the aliens, third dimensional being, fifth dimensional beings, whatever it is that comes through me in the middle of the night, gives me these really amazing ways to offer this stuff to people so that they can be in a space of navigating. And so the way I invite people to navigate, and I invite anybody who's listening to this to navigate this, by asking yourself, what am I feeling, right? What am I feeling? I feel, and saying, I feel, and then because. I feel, then what it is, and then because. And so what came through, right, the other night, so check this shit out. So I woke up and I heard, right? So, the house music situation, right? And so then I heard, then the word own came in, O-W-N. And I was like, okay. And so I wrote it down. And this is how my things come in the middle of the night. And then I just keep hearing, and then own, and then ONSC, right? ONSC. And I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And so I'm waiting. And so in relation to the emotional navigation, it's own what you're experiencing, name what you're experiencing, right? And then, do I want to sustain it or change it?
Ooh, I like that.
ONSC, right? And so the stuff that I taught at EmotionALL was, I feel because, and do I want to stay here or do I want to change it, right? And so I feel is the own, right? I'm owning my feelings. So I can say, you make me feel this way. I'm actually projecting that it's you doing it to me instead of me owning it. So I own the emotion. Then I name it. I feel sad. And some people will stop there. I feel sad. And then they don't know what's driving it. When you say, I feel sad because, and then you wait and you see what comes up. I feel sad because I'm alone. I feel sad because this person left me, and I'm alone, and this. And so when you start to own it, right? So you own it, you name it. Or do you want to sustain it, or do you want to change it? I want to continue feeling sad would be sustain it. I don't want to be sad. I want something else, is to change it. And so this is the basic emotional navigation space. And so I can always remember it whenever. So this is what I've been doing with some of the people that I've been working with, is I've told them about ONSC. And then every time they need to navigate something, I just go,
it's like an anchor.
Yeah, it's an anchor. So I anchor it in there. But this is the basics of the
That's actually good.
Yeah, right.
I have a question.
Tell me, ask me. Yeah.
So, say someone feels hurt because of something that happened, though, that triggered the hurt. And when they say, I feel hurt because you yelled at me or something, like, isn't that kind of like, how do you, I guess, do that without blaming someone or whatever?
Right. So I would remove the because you yelled at me. I feel, what was it?
I feel hurt.
I feel hurt because I heard a loud voice, or because there was a tone that came at me, not because you said it, because it's still projecting onto the other person. I feel hurt when I'm spoken to in that manner.
Okay.
Right. And that is not projecting because you spoke to me. That's the blaming space. That's not owning. That's putting it on somebody else. I feel hurt when I'm spoken to in that space. And I don't want to feel this way anymore. How can we both win? Right? What can you do to support me in this space? Or are you interested in supporting me in that space? And so it's always, if the person is interested, right? If they're not interested, then you can take a sovereign space and be like, all right, well, in order for me to not feel hurt, I need to step away from the situation. I need to connect somewhere else. Anytime there's hurt, there is a threat of safety. Something's hurting me. What about me is hurt? And if the person is not in a position to slow down and actually navigate that with you, you can navigate it on your own until that person is ready to come around, if they ever are. Does that make sense? And so it's always, for me, it's always the removal of the blame of another person and owning my own emotions. That's why it's EmotionALL. It's all of me. It's all of my circumstances and situations. Because regardless of another person doing something to me, how I respond is still within my grasp, unless I perceive that I don't have that. And when I'm in an empowered space, I can do anything. I can do anything. I can perceive and feel anything within myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It sounds a lot easier in theory than practice.
It is. And that's why you have to practice it.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't go to the gym and just start deadlifting 300 pounds. You have to practice. You have to practice with a couple of dumbbells maybe, and then move up in the dumbbells and move up to the barbell, then put a plate on, right? Put a 10-pound plate, a 25-pound plate, then move up. And you have to exercise, you know?
And like, what if someone is shares how they're feeling with you, and it comes across like they're blaming or shaming? Like, do you just share that you're experiencing that's what's happening?
Well, I can say I feel blamed. Right? It's still, I feel blamed, not you're blaming me.
Yeah.
I feel blamed right now. When I hear things like that, not when you say that to me, when I hear things like that, I feel blamed.
Got it. So as long as both people own their experience, but another piece of it is, as far as like emotional navigation and conflict with someone else, it's important that they both own their experience and also are able to hear the other person, because it can't be just one person hearing and the other person not.
Right. Yeah. And if a person is not able to hear, they probably don't feel safe.
Yeah. That was a huge eye opener to me, because I can recognize if I don't feel safe, but I didn't realize that, someone else's anger like means that they don't feel safe,
Yeah.
or someone else's whatever, like, because I was always just thinking about, oh, I don't, so that was an eye opener.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a big deal that most people don't know that they don't feel safe.
They themselves don't know that
They
they don't
don't,
feel
they
safe.
don't,
Got it.
they don't know that they don't feel safe. I don't know why I'm so angry all the time.
Mm.
If you're angry all the time, you're not safe.
So how does someone start to discover or learn what they need to feel safe?
I feel angry because,
And then that will
that's the start of it.
Okay.
Okay. I feel angry because when this is said to me, or even if it's like, because you said this to me, okay. And because when you say this to me, and you just keep going, or because, I feel angry because when you do this, I don't like it, because when I don't like things, it doesn't feel good in my body, because, and you keep drilling down. And this is the thing, you got to have the space to do it. And so when you look at, all emotions are driven by 3 points. I call them the 3 points of ease, and they are safety, connection, and fulfillment, right? There are 3 points. Safety is the foundation, it's the baseline, that's the poverty line. When you're above the poverty line, you start to move into awesome spaces. When you're below the poverty line, there's no hearing anything. There's not going to be enjoyment. There's not going to be anything except unpleasant emotions, because you're not safe. So when you get to the safety space, you can start to explore the connection space, which is kind of like middle class income, right? Where you're able to connect, you're able to thrive, you move out of the survival space. Below the safety space is survival, above safety is survival. Move above that, you're not having to worry about it. You start to move into more luxurious spaces. Then you have connection. And when you have connection, it's easy, right? When you first get into a relationship with somebody, it's really easy because you're connected and you're not seeing the undercurrent of things that could drive the unsafe complexes to come online. And when you're connected, then you can move into an even more luxurious space, which is fulfillment or satisfaction. So safety, connection, and fulfillment. So when you have safety, you may feel, all right, cool, I'm even. When you feel connected, you feel in love, you feel, you're starting to feel some happiness. And then when you get into things like joy and total relaxation, that's a luxury space. And so if a person is in a space where they're angry all the time, they're not safe. Anger is a protective mechanism. It's our body's, our organism, not just our body, our whole organism's protective mechanism. If somebody comes to throw a punch at you, are you going to smile and lean into it and just put your face in? Or are you going to frown and put your arm up? That's anger coming online to protect you, right? And so if somebody says something to you and you are offended, when I have an offense coming in, that's an attack. And so I defend to retaliate. That's when I get angry and I fight, right? And so this is a protective mechanism, and that's all the time. When somebody's angry, they're not safe. When somebody's hurt, they're not safe. When somebody's frightened, they're not safe. And so there's never a time in a person's life where they feel or perceive any of these things that it's not right. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you're angry. It always makes sense to me. And I can always find it by asking questions.
Yeah. And my next question also was like about the safety. Like, it doesn't matter if you're actually in physical danger. If you feel unsafe, you're unsafe.
It doesn't make a difference. It's because it's the thought of danger. It's the thought of danger that's driving things. And this is one of the people that come to me and they ask me about anxiety. Well, what do you do about anxiety? I'm like, anxiety is a matrix emotion. I call it a matrix emotion because it consists of a lot of other emotions. And so they're all jumbled together. And so the person can't perceive anything because they're navigating multiple things at the same time. And so when you have thoughts of, oh my gosh, well, what if this person comes home and they see me this way? And what will they think? And what will happen if they tell somebody else? And and so the mind is creating scenarios, and the scenarios are being pushed into the body, and the body is starting to look to prepare for all of the different scenarios. And so since you have all of these different scenarios, it can become an overload situation. And so it drives the body to produce hormones to run away or to fight. And so since those hormones are all pumping through the body starts to rev up, and the body revs up and it gets into a space where it can't function. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so this is where the thoughts are very, very important. And when a person is in anxiety, what I always do is I'm like, okay, let's pick one thing right now and let's drill it down. Let's find the safety in that space, and then let's move to the next one. But let's lean into this one thing. And so this is the thing. thoughts are always there. And like when I was teaching at EmotionALL, we have different layers of thought. We have the conscious awareness space. If you could imagine an iceberg, right? Like the biggest part of the iceberg is underneath the water. And the deeper you go, the darker it gets, right? And so the sunlight is hitting the top of the iceberg so it can actually melt and integrate with everything that's going on. And so the top of the iceberg is actually the conscious awareness space. This is the things we're aware of. Like you're aware of me, I'm aware of you, I'm aware of Phoebe here, we're aware of the couch and all of this stuff. And then we have the unconscious, which is like right below the surface of the water. And so right below the surface of the water would kind of be like, I can reach under the couch and be like, oh, there's some dust here. I can find the dust, right? And this will be the things that you don't need to access right now, but they're just under the surface so you can access them. And then there's what we would call the unconscious mind, which is deep, deep down in the water. The sunlight is not getting to it because it's so deep in the water, you can't get to it. And these are running our body's processes of safety, our body's processes of breathing, our body's processes of holding on to traumas and programs around protecting ourselves and these types of things that get pushed down so that we don't have to be thinking about it all the time. If I have to constantly think about the traumas and stuff and my protective mechanisms, it can overwhelm me. And so it gets pushed down into the unconscious, and the unconscious mind will come online when it needs to, right? And when it needs to protect. And that's why when I was facilitating psychedelic experiences, one of the questions I would ask on my intake form is, what's your favorite color? What's your least favorite color? Are there any colors that make you feel certain ways? And people would be like, I don't like the color brown, right? And it's like, okay, well, what happened with the color brown? And so are there any, when you walk in, so somebody's like, when I walk in my house, I get so upset. What color is the furniture in your house? Oh, it's brown. Boom. Right. And so this is an unconscious situation from somebody maybe having something that happened in their childhood.
And they don't even realize it.
They didn't realize
it, but so it's still charged.
But there's an unconscious thought pattern, right? And so that unconscious thought pattern is in there. It's baked into the nervous system. It's baked into your whole organism. And so being able to say because, right? Because. Yeah. This was another thing that came up the other day, the yellow brick road, right? Because, right? And so you go down the yellow brick road and you find what's messing with you by asking because over and over again. I feel this way because this, and because when a person says this, it feels this way. Because.
And so when you do that, when you keep doing the because, and then you uncover like the actual thought or story that's like driving the emotion, I'm guessing, is it then easier to shift it? Is that another way of reprogramming?
You can't. Well, the thing is, if I'm not aware of something, it's going to be challenging for me to change it.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I'm aware of something, I can change it if I want to do something about it, and I can just put a name on it. And so for me, people are looking to fix trauma. People are looking to fix things. And the first thing is, if you're not aware that it's there, how can you adjust something at all? And so I'm not about digging in, but if a person goes in and they can see where the unsafe space is, they can actually speak to the unsafe space. They can actually get the environment to support them in that space.
So they can get to know what supports them in feeling safe and communicating that.
Yeah. And it's the safety. It's not fixing or pulling that out or whatever.
It's just like, what do I need to feel safe?
Yeah. What do I need to feel safe? If you're afraid of spiders and there's a rubber spider hanging in front of your house, and every time you walk in your house, you're angry, and you didn't realize that. Once you realize that spiders are kind of messing with you, it's like, can we get rid of this? Can we move this into another room or, out of my awareness space? Because I don't feel safe with it. And it's okay for you to not feel safe if that not safe space is protecting you. But sometimes we're protecting ourselves from people and circumstances that are just, it's imagined. And it's, when we imagine things, it's a thought. And so the imagination this is why we make believe, right? The land of make believe. We actually live in a land of make believe. I am making myself believe things all the time through my thought processes. And so if someone else can offer me a thought and that influences me to believe something, it influences my emotions, right? And this is so where we have the difference between, we spoke about the difference between belief and doubt, or the connection of belief and doubt. They're one and the same thing, actually. And the difference between belief and knowledge. Like I know certain, like I know certain things. And the different levels of my existence would be like, I have my mental knowing, I have my body knowing, I have my emotional knowing, I have the knowing of my constructs. They all work in different spaces. So whereas this doesn't make sense in your mind, in parts of your mind, but the identity complex that's baked into you may believe something different. And so if you have multiple belief structures going on inside you at the same time, it can be challenging.
This is deep. This is deep stuff.
It always goes deep.
And like, I imagine like people in relationship or friendship, like they have to like, I mean, if they want to resolve conflict or whatever, have better communication, it's awareness on both parts is really important, and being able to hold space for each other's experience.
and a willingness, you know,
yeah.
there's a willingness to learn and expand. And sometimes when we get wrapped up in our lives and our, you know, adhering to the job and working for the man and or the woman or whoever you work for, right? When we get wrapped up in that and we get unsafe if our paycheck's not coming in, if we get unsafe if we can't pay the rent or whatever, then navigating something like this in a relationship is not convenient. And so convenience is a luxury. And so remember, safety, connection, that more convenience, fulfillment is the ultimate convenience. This is a luxury space. And so if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're not aware that they're struggling or they've been struggling or having challenges all their lives, they may not be safe enough to actually connect with you in a space. I had a conversation with someone yesterday who was like, I don't want to be vulnerable. And I asked why. You know, what's the reason? I didn't ask why. I asked what's the reason. What's the reason for you not wanting to be vulnerable? And they're like, well, because if I'll be seen. And what would happen because, right? What would happen if you're seen? Well, if I'm seen, then somebody might see the real me. And okay, and what would happen if they saw the real you? Well, they wouldn't like it. And so there's an undercurrent of shame underneath that. And so shame gives me it comes from an idea that something is wrong, bad, broken, not enough, too much about me, someone else, or something else, or something, period. Right? And so if I have an idea of that, then if something's wrong with me and I come to you and I put me in front of you, then I'm actually threatening you. So you're not safe. And if I care about
how is that?
Well, if something's wrong with me,
if you believe something's wrong,
if I believe something is wrong with me and I come around you and I believe that you'll perceive something is wrong with me, right? Then you'll stay away from me, right? Because something being wrong with me might be a threat to you. I'm making stuff up right now. But if you're in that space, if I'm protecting you from me, from who I am, from my darkest secrets, from my true self, then you're not safe. Then I perceive that you're not safe. And so this is where the safety is not always about the owner of the safety. It's also about the owner's projection of safety. And so if I perceive that, if I'm in a relationship with you, we're in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever we want to call it these days, right? If I'm in a relationship with you and I'm afraid to tell you about my past relationships because I'm afraid you're going to think something about me and you're going to leave me, I'm afraid that you're not safe with who I am. So I'm not safe with you thinking that I'm not, you feel me? And so you go down this rabbit hole of not safe. And so this was the thing with the vulnerability space with this person, was they didn't feel safe to express themselves because they had been left by somebody in the past when they expressed themselves. And so they are trying to craft the person that they're with into a specific space of liking them. And so this is where we get people pleasing from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so when we get into the people pleasing space, I'm constantly trying to get you to feel easy. I'm pushing things at you to influence your thoughts. So you think something about me, so you feel nice about me. So we're always influencing other people and influencing ourselves all the time until we pull back and just like, you can be influenced how you choose to be influenced. I want you to be free in your influence of yourself. But we're constantly when we're people pleasing, we're trying to get the whole environment to cooperate with the ideal vision that we have for the way things should look.
That's super deep. I feel like you could relate this to every area of your life.
Yep. Before I started to explore psychedelics, I did not know that I was a control freak. In my first psychedelic experience, I went in and I learned that I was lying to everyone about everything because I was afraid that they didn't like me or that they wouldn't like me. And it stemmed from me not feeling like I was worthy of my mother's love. And I never wanted anything to get back to my mother that would cause her to believe that I was outside of her grace. And so I did it with everybody. I lied to everyone. And I was doing my best to get everybody to see me a certain way because I didn't believe that I was safe being seen for who I was. And so since I didn't believe that I was safe with who I was, you couldn't possibly be safe with who I am because something's wrong with me. You wouldn't want to be around with me you wouldn't want to be around me because of the person that I really am inside. You wouldn't like the things that I like. You wouldn't like the quirky things that I do. You wouldn't like the direction that I like to have the toilet paper in the bathroom, right? Like all of these things that right now in my life they're pretty trivial things now, but they were a big deal. And since they were a big deal, I didn't want people to see that because I thought that my big deal was too much. It was just, it was somebody would think something about me. And I got lost in this spiral of people pleasing, and my emotions were on fire all the time. And I couldn't hear them telling me to go in the opposite direction. So
what were they telling you in that point?
They were telling me to be myself. They were screaming. Our emotions are going to speak until we actually let them out, or we change our thought patterns. And so if we're not aware of our thought patterns, and our unconscious thought patterns are driving a lot of this stuff, we've got to get the stuff at the top to melt, right? The conscious thought patterns and the subconscious thought patterns to melt and move away, so that the bottom of the iceberg can start coming to the surface. And as the bottom of the iceberg comes to the surface, we can start to address this stuff. And as that melts away, the next layer comes up. It's just like a Pez dispenser. You take a piece of candy out and the next one comes up. You take a piece of candy out and the next one comes up. And so this is how our thought patterns work. And they affect our emotions, and our emotions affect our thoughts.
So it's like a loop.
It's a loop.
Which starts first?
The chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Right. They're not.
Since emotions are, I mean, energy in motion, essentially too. There's a lot of things that can impact them, things that are happening in the world. Well, I guess it always goes back to a thought too.
Well, it does. It goes back to both. And I didn't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. It goes back to both, and it goes back to the idea of separation, which is a foundational issue with humanity, is that we believe that we are separate from ourselves and each other. And so we break ourselves into a mind, into a spirit, into a mind, into our constructs and identities, right? Into our heart and our intuition and emotions. And we break ourselves into a body, and we break ourselves, and we also have these bugs, these microbiological things that live in us and on us. And so we break ourselves into all of this, when in fact this is not my hand, this is my body. I call it my hand so that I can identify a part of my body, right? But I can put a story around what this is. It's still my body. This body is still of this earth, right? This body is still this flesh, blood. It's all one thing. And so when we start to separate the emotion and the mind, right, we start to pull things apart, and we start to be reductionist. And we have a lot of reductionist science and reductionist theories and stuff in our world. And when we come back to wholeness, and we see that the mind and the emotions work together, we stop pulling them apart. We've been taught to separate them. Don't feel that, right? Men are, I'm speaking as a man, with my experience as a man. That's what you said, right? When we speak about me being a man, I was taught as a kid, don't cry, men don't cry. That's for suckers. You don't have emotions, you don't feel things,
or you can control your emotions or push them down or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes back to the space of emotions in contrast to behaviors, right? My emotions and behaviors are not the same thing. I can behave on behalf of my emotions, right? Like if I get angry, I can sit here and be as stoic as possible, or I can frown. The frowning is a behavior that comes with it. It may feel really natural to do it, right? But if I get up and I flip the table over and I throw a chair across the room, that is a behavior. That is not my anger. And so people will blame the anger for the behavior.
Got it.
And so behaviors can be regulated,
but the emotions are still there.
Emotions are still going to be there until the thought process changes or it's resolved.
Or until you feel it.
I mean, you are feeling it.
Yeah.
your perception of the feeling changes.
Yeah.
And so I like to call it analgesia. You know what analgesics are, right? So analgesics are medications like Tylenol, Motrin. They're antipyretic, which changes the temperature of the body. They bring fevers down. And they're also anti-inflammatory, which brings inflammation down. And they're also analgesic, which alters your pain perception. I don't like these medications for any of these things. Okay, I'm not a fan of these medications, but it blocks your pain perception. It does not change that you have pain. Your body always knows that you have pain, but your mental processes get detached from the pain sequence, right? So your body's pain perception changes. And so when we change our perception of our emotions, right, the emotion is still there. It's like, man, I knew this for years. I've been holding this in. And now you start to realize that you have been holding something in for years and years and years. And it was outside of your awareness because you pushed it down into the subconscious and probably into the unconscious. So you don't have to feel it because it's so uncomfortable. And we've been taught not to feel uncomfortable things. For me, I prefer to feel my discomfort and get to the other side of it. Yeah. I prefer to have the conversations that are funky and get to the other side of it. This is a space of courage, though. And like we were talking about at EmotionALL, it's like, be courageous. You have to be courageous. This is not for the faint of heart. And so being in the courageous space is actually facing all the things that are causing you to have the emotions.
Can you speak a little bit more on like how a lot of men have been taught to push their emotions down versus women are naturally more emotional creatures? And like, you know, I know that can be a thing.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. Great question. And thank you for bringing it up.
I think it would be helpful for people who are, you know, in different.
It's always helpful for me to talk about it over and over again as a male, a person who is a male, identifies as a male, whatever that construct is nowadays, right? The women, female bodies, okay, because there are people who associate as women that are not in female biological bodies, tend to have emotional complexes. Well, they don't tend to have, they have chemical complexes that are completely different than males. Their hormones are different. And so the energy that moves through them tends to move a lot more fully than males. And so the ability to stifle that is more challenging for women. And so it's more allowed. It has been built into our societies and structures to allow this to the surface. Men also have emotions, but we've been taught to keep it subdued. We've been taught to keep it in control, to have a power sequence of some sort. And it's been an issue in our world. When we look at the energetic dynamics of masculine energy and feminine energy, the male body, okay, and this is something that I've had conversations with lots of people about, and they're like, oh shit, that makes plenty of sense. The male body is designed to harness masculine energy differently than the female body that is designed to harness and navigate feminine energy more effectively. And so when they come together, they have Tantra, right? There's the tantric flow of masculine and feminine. Now, when you have hyper masculinized people who hold in the feminine energy that's actually moving through them and they don't let it move, and the feminine energy is chaotic, okay? And it's chaotic, and chaos is not a bad thing. It's all encompassing, it's aberrant, it changes, it's expressive, it also receives, right? And it receives direction, right? And so if you could imagine a room full of air, then you can see the air, you can actually see the air. The air is feminine. When you put the air inside of a tank to carry it around like an oxygen tank, you have now put a masculine container around feminine dynamic. And so it's holding it for a purpose or for a reason, so it can be directed and guided to somebody else or for some particular use. And then when you open the valve, the air comes out and it's like, it's everywhere in an instant, because feminine energy cannot be harnessed in the same way that masculine energy can, right? It can be directed, it can be guided. And that's where masculine guidance comes from. And so we've put our society in this place of hyper masculinizing everything, and everything have to be a control dynamic. And we've been forcing women into these stifled, or female bodies into these stifled situations of how they should act and how they should hold back and all of that. So I'm challenging what you were saying before as far as women not being expressive, because women can be a lot more expressive than they are. They've been taught to be stifled, right? And if you want to see a free woman, let a woman really speak her voice and be full in it, and outside of fear. There's a different quality to it. There's a different movement to a woman. It's different. But we've masculinized our society around keeping people stifled so that we can build what we build. And men have been put into this position of this not showing emotion is powerful. This stoicism and all of these things are very powerful. And I think it's a very toxic space. And part of what I've seen in my career as a nurse and as a practitioner in psychedelics, as a coach, is men die a lot younger than women. And it's not because of old age, and that's just how it is. It's because of the holding in of that feminine energy and the stifling of the emotional complexes.
Wow.
Emotions are feminine. Okay. And I don't care what anybody tells you. Emotions are all feminine because they're chaotic. And they don't ask for permission, right? And I'm not saying women don't ask for permission. Okay, so let's not get it twisted. This is an energetic space I'm talking about. Emotions are feminine. And when we hyper masculinize and we hold them in, we are confining something that has not been designed to be confined. It's been designed to express, right? To feel and to guide. And so since that intuitive situation is being held inside of the male body, there's a chaos that's happening inside the male body that becomes disruptive, and it wreaks havoc on the inside, because the hormones are still moving around on the inside of the body. Okay, whether we're aware of it or not, the hormones are moving around. And so and if there are hormones that are being distributed inside the body and they're not supposed to be all over the body for long periods of time, they cause mutations, they cause changes, they cause all kinds of things that happen inside the body. And so it can become very, very destructive on the male organism. And that's my belief structure. Any male that I've spoken to that's over the age of 70 or 80 is super chill, connected to their feminine spaces. They are able to fall into a lot of really, really wonderful places and be in ease.
Wow.
And it's connected to that energy. And so the idea that being feminine, being flowy, having any kind of openness to yourself is a stifling of the feminine energetic in the masculine male body, which is a thing.
Wow.
And so we've also imparted that onto women by telling them they can't,
and project
you're too loud, right?
Or
and
too
so,
much or whatever, too sensitive.
And so we're projecting that masculine dynamic onto females, and it causes them to
feel constricted.
To feel constricted.
Definitely been there.
To feel constricted, to feel restricted, to feel oppressed. Right. And so
then the oppress and trap triangle comes online.
That's right. The OTT comes online. But this is built into our societies. And this is why we have the patriarchal systems on our planet. This is my current belief structure, that the patriarchal systems on our planet have been stifling female bodies for a long time, because the power of the universe is in that feminine energy. And I mean, it's in both energies, but the power of creativity, the power of expansion, the power of emotive processes is in the feminine energetic. And when the feminine energetic is free, everything is easy, right? It's chaotic, it's all over the place, it's easy. But when you want to bring things into order and have structure, you bring the masculine in to kind of guide things, not to control things. And this is part of the issue with a lot of what I see right now with a lot of coaching spaces. Is there's some hyper masculinization, step into your masculine and just be male and all of this other stuff. That's awesome. And you can step into your masculine and still observe your feminine energy as well, and offer a container for the feminine to bounce inside of and kind of guide it into different spaces without stifling it.
How does one begin to even practice something like that if they're so used to the or maybe if they don't feel safe, because maybe they don't feel safe from a feminine chaotic energy that they're not used to, or something like that? I'm sure that comes up a lot.
It does. It comes up a lot. I don't know how to do this. And the first thing is awareness of your behavior patterns. Are you stifling things? Do you have to be in control all the time? Can you allow? And so there comes the dynamic around surrender. People will talk about surrendering and falling in. Surrendering is a feminine trait, right? When you surrender, when you fall into something, you just fall into, you allow, you be. And so we have two things in our universe, right, that represent masculine and feminine energy for me. Okay. There's being, and there's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The feminine is being, allowing, right? Receiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
The masculine is directing, logistics, building, creating, structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the being and the doing. We are nothing without both.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
it's the being who's doing the doing that
it's the
really
being, exactly. But the feminine encompasses all. Right. And it allows for the masculine to be inside of the feminine. And this is where we have this the whole sex dynamic, penis vagina type of situation. Right.
Wow, that's deep.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
And we're designed. So when you look at the religions that say we are built in the image of God, right? God, universe, whatever you want to call it, is the feminine and masculine dynamic interacting with one another. We are built in the image of that. And the masculine, feminine, the penis vagina situation, right, is the same type of dynamic. Even when you get to the sperm and the egg, right? The egg, the ovum actually allows the sperm cell to penetrate it. It surrenders to that one. And it's very choosy, right? You have millions of sperm cells moving in through the whole situation, and that it surrenders to that one sperm that it chooses.
Wow.
The feminine chooses.
Wow.
It always
That's
chooses.
deep.
And so we've been blocking the feminine from choosing, because when you look at it by and at large, most men are waiting for women to choose them. Right. I'm waiting for somebody to choose me. And that's the way it is. And we can go on a hunt and do all of this other stuff. But if the woman doesn't really, if the female doesn't accept the male, there's going to be calamity. It will always be that way.
So the woman chooses.
Yeah. And whether you're aware of it or not. And so you can be outside of your awareness of the choices that you're making. You can be squeezed into making a choice, but you still make a choice. And so you can always say no, but you've been trained not to say no. And that for me, that's an issue. Not you per se, but females by and at large. And this is my perspective. I'm open to hearing different things from different people. This conversation is always open for me. I'm always into learning. This is the way I see things. And I'd like to see something different. Show it to me. Please show me something different than I'm observing so that I can learn, because I'm into learning things. I'm into knowing, I'm into, all kinds of structures and stuff. But this whole dynamic around the masculine and feminine is the energetic space that has to do with our emotions. And emotions are the feminine energy that's guiding us into a particular, go this way, go this way, go there, follow the chaos, and you will find your order. You will, every time. When you follow the chaos, you follow your order. You follow the order, you find your chaos. This is Tantra. And so when we have the Tantra communities that are doing all these things around sacred sexuality and all that stuff, sacred sexuality, and that word sacred is for me, right? Sacred sexuality is the marrying of these two energetic spaces. It's not just about sexual intercourse, which is what people get twisted into, these ideas. When I am in the idea of my emotions, when I move my emotions through me and they express, another person has to actually be in a space to receive that. So you have to be in your feminine to receive it. Then you take it, you process it, and you send something back out, which is a masculine space. When you send something out, when you direct the signal to something, it's a masculine space. I have to actually be in a masculine space to send something out. The other person has to be in a space to receive that information, take it in, process it. And when you process it, you send it back out. And so again, that masculine, feminine dynamic, it's all in that. And so if I'm in a position where your emotion is not welcome here, I'm blocking the feminine from coming to me. And that it be that a male, be that a female, whatever your gender dynamic is, it doesn't matter. The feminine and masculine energy have to move back and forth.
So if a feminine or a woman is like expressing herself and the other person's not able to receive it or doesn't want to hear it or doesn't hold space for it, it's blocking it, basically, or pushing it away.
It's not connection. Remember, safety, connection, fulfillment. And if a person's not safe enough to connect, then we don't have the volley, right? I can be sending information to you. If you're doing the woman thing with bracelets, you're blocking it. And
so it's that they don't feel safe if they're trying to push it away or say it's too much or whatever.
Right. And so remember,
always safety.
If it's always safe, that's the foundation. It's the ultimate space around emotions is safety. And so when I say something to you, if you don't feel safe to receive it, you won't process it. you will not process it. I can sit here and yell and yell and yell and scream, and if you're not in a position to hear it, you won't hear it. And so it is.
That makes sense. I was literally just talking to someone recently and sharing like that in order to receive information, it's easier to receive with the delivery being in a way that is more functional, like positive reinforcement, like the feedback sandwich from NLP, like, you know, stuff like that, or else it ain't gonna get through.
Right.
Or it'll take like a lot longer and probably will cause a lot of other things.
So when we have different levels of logic, and this is something that I teach in our integration program, the Condor approach, is the logic ceiling. There are different levels of logic. Okay, logic for me, the context that I work from it, is something that makes sense. And there are different types of logic. There's body logic, which what makes sense to the body, to keep the body safe, to keep the body functioning, to keep the body interactive for the experience, whatever makes sense to the body. Then there's the emotional space, what makes sense to tell you that you're in ease or dis-ease. But if you're not in a position to be in body logic, you're not going to get to delineate between ease and dis-ease, right? So you have to be safe on a body level in order to get the sense of the disease space. Once you're in the space where you feel easy in your emotions, then you can move out into the construct space, which is what makes sense for your identity, your race, your gender, your nationality, all of these things, what makes sense for your constructs. And then outside of that, when you get into a more relaxed space, you can get into the mind space, where like we are in a mind space. Like I don't perceive that anybody's going to come in here and shoot me, right? I don't perceive delete, right? I don't believe that the house is going to fall down. So I'm in a position to feel body safe. I don't feel any kind of disease right now. My constructs are not threatened. You're not saying that my identity is stupid or something like that. So I feel accepted. So I can get into a space where I can get into deep thought and delineate. That's a luxury space. Okay. So when my nervous system is able to get into that type of thinking space, I am in a luxury. Okay. And then when I can get into a spirit space, which would be what makes sense just to exist, that's even more of a luxury space. But when you think about poverty in our world, when people don't have food, they don't have a place to live, and you're asking them to be in a mental logic space, it's not going to work. They have to be able to get into that luxury space, being able to think clearly.
It's like the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, like Maslow's. Yeah. When you get into that space of being able to delineate things, there's a safety that you have. But there are many people that can't get into the mind space because they're struggling to pay the rent. They're struggling. They're afraid that their kids are not safe. Somebody's abusing them in their household. Try having a conversation like this with somebody who's unsafe. And so if I'm in a household with someone and they're not safe and they're angry all the time, they're not safe. And so what can I do to support that person in perceiving safety? That for me is the pinnacle of all this, is what can I do to support you in being safe? How can I do that? Everything has to stop. When Cole's not feeling safe, and Cole's my partner for those of y'all who don't know, if you're not feeling safe, if she's not feeling safe, everything has to stop. What do we do for you to be in a safe space? And if she doesn't know, then I wait. Okay, do you need your hair? She when she gets into a space, she'll be like, when she is in a safe space, she'll be like, when I get like that, I need you to touch my hair or whatever. And so I'll touch her hair and I'll just wait. It's not my process, it's hers. And so if she's not in a safe space, how can I support that? And this is the thing with other people. I've gone into a grocery store, somebody's screaming and shouting at the cashier, and people are like, you have to stop, you have to stop, you have to stop. And they're fighting with the person. And I'll walk over and I'll be like, man, it looks totally unsafe. Like people are out to get you. Yeah, everybody's out to get me. Yeah, what would you need so that you didn't feel like people are out to get you? Well, I need to be out of here. I need to just pay for my stuff. Would you like to go first? Is anybody here against this person going first? Right? And then the person starts to de-escalate. And so once they start to de-escalate and they feel safe and they feel seen and they feel that somebody is in support of them, their nervous system can relax, and then they can expand into a space where they can actually think.
Because you definitely can't think when you don't feel safe.
When you don't feel safe, you can't think clearly.
So when you were saying, if Cole didn't feel safe and you asked her, what do you need to feel safe? But what if you both didn't feel safe? I guess you'd have to kind of...
It's naming it. It's like, I don't feel safe. Well, I don't feel safe either.
Because
Okay.
like, how can you provide safety for each other if you both don't?
How can we both win? And so it takes one person to say, okay, is it okay if I offer some space or take some space for myself for a few minutes? I'm outside the interest of you being in a space where you feel abandoned. I feel like I'm able to be unclear right now, and I want to bring the clearest version of myself to this conversation. Are you cool with that? And if they say no, and they want to continue, say, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to sit here and witness you, and I'm going to allow you to say whatever it is you need to say or be however you need to be, and just shut up, right? And just sit there and wait.
Yeah.
And that's where the dynamic changes. It takes one person to recognize a trigger and to be the person to hold the container. And I don't need to be right. And that's one of the things I used to have to be right all the time. And so I would argue with people into the ground because if I need to be right all the time, then my idea of my knowledge is threatened. And so my idea of my knowledge is not safe. Right. And so this is where the little
probably really hard to see.
Yeah, but this is the thing.
You want to know it all.
but most people, if I tell you something and you're like, no, that's not how it went. Your idea of how it went is now being threatened by my idea of how it went. If we both exchanged the same, we were in the same place at the same time, we are having two different experiences of the same occurrence. And for you to describe it a certain way, and for me to be like, no, that's not how it went. First of all, my idea is threatened. My idea of how it went is threatened. Now I'm threatening your idea of how it went. And then we get into an argument back and forth because neither one of us, our ideas are not safe. And this is one of the things that gets bypassed a lot in the emotional navigation space, is that people are not looking at their ideas being threatened. If your idea is threatened, your idea doesn't have a body other than the body you live in. And so your emotional complexes will come online because the idea is in dis-ease. And so if the idea is in dis-ease, it will act through the body.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Right. And so when you think about it, right, when you think about things like nationality, right, you have patriots in the United States of America. Well, if you were to say one thing against the American flag or do something, they come into your house and shoot you.
Wow.
Because the construct itself is threatened. And so the construct has been so deeply embedded into certain people that they will kill you over it. People, how many people say I'd kill for my family? Family is a construct. It's an idea.
Wow.
Right. And I know people that get beat up by their family and abused by their family, and they will still kill for their family because of construct.
And religions, you see it a lot too. People defending their religion, like getting all mean and pissed about people who don't believe the same thing. And
yeah. Look at our world. We have people doing suicide bombing and stuff for religions and all kinds of crazy stuff.
So the key is also to have an open mind.
Open mind
to other people's experiences and belief systems and ideas.
Right. And so this is where, I can be fine with your belief structure, but your behavior, if your behavior is going to cause detriment to me, that's where I defend myself. You can tell me all about your beliefs. Don't put your hands on me. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no reason that I don't see a reason for anybody to put their hands on me because of what I believe in.
Yeah.
It's just not, and I don't see a reason for me to put my hands on somebody because of what they believe in, unless they believe that I should die and they're going to make an attempt on my life. That's a different story. Okay. Because if you're putting an attempt on my life, I'm not safe.
Yeah.
So my emotions are going to come online. My anger is going to come online. My fright is going to come online. All that's going to come online to protect me. And if I say, oh, this doesn't make sense, or, I bury it, I'm burying the perception of it, but it's still there.
Wow.
Anytime that somebody's afraid of somebody, it's always there.
Wow. This is so deep. I feel like we could talk forever.
And ever.
It's so fascinating because it's like so many intricacies, and I love learning more about myself and other people so I could understand better, just like I guess you do too.
Yeah.
And so like when I'm hearing you share all of this and like starting to see my own stuff and like things that have happened with other people and how to proceed in the future with like just being even more aware of my own experience and emotions and other people's and holding space and all that, I could feel the importance of this work so deeply to actually have fulfillment in connections with other people too, and in being supportive for other people.
Yeah.
Like it's a must, because people are going to get into conflict or not always see things the same way or whatever. And if you don't know how to navigate it, you can get stuck.
you can, and that's an issue.
Yeah.
It's a huge issue.
So thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
You have a whole thing coming up. Do you want to share a little bit about EmotionALL?
Sure.
I don't know, like,
sure,
whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll share about a couple of things. For anybody who's interested in emotional navigation, I have an 8-week intensive group coaching situation where we're doing a 90-minute call every week. There's going to be videos before those calls for you to explore the concept that we're going to dive into, so that you come ready to the call with the concept in mind, maybe a challenge that you've had, and I will coach in real time on the calls.
Nice.
And so this is going to be for 8 weeks. We're going to dive into these spaces, but there's going to be videos for you to go in and look at the concepts and really have your space. There's going to be workbooks for you to do, and I'd say it's about 3.5 hours a week.
Nice.
It's not a tremendous amount of time to go into. The call is an hour and a half, and the other time you'll spend, watching a video that'll probably be 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then maybe a half hour or so of just dialing into the workbook, so that you can really lean into that space. And learning how to navigate these things is really, really important. The people that I have a testimonial, a 10-minute testimonial that somebody sent me yesterday from last week's EmotionALL, and they said that their relationship has changed with their partner who came to EmotionALL.
Nice.
Their relationship with the kids.
I highly recommend this for partners too.
I got you and a couple other people said that I should do this with with couples.
Yeah,
and I'd be down to do that. But this one coming up, it starts June 22nd.
This is the 8-week one.
The 8-week,
cool.
Yeah, June 22nd. It's going to be every Thursday.
Nice.
From 6 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time, and we're going through till I think it's August 10th.
Cool.
And so anybody that's here, that's in your audience, that's interested in diving into that, I'll knock $500 off the tuition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Highly, highly, highly recommend. And this for anyone, really, after I took the EmotionALL thing, and I want to go even deeper into all this too. It has opened my mind so much and supported me is currently supporting me in my life. And I can see how you can apply this to every area, business, relationships. Like, I now feel more connected to myself and compassionate for other people's experiences, and actually have a deeper level of taking responsibility for my own emotions, like how you were saying in the beginning, like really own your space and your feelings, and just love everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Like, for those of you listening, I'm gonna just freaking say this again. Tah is like next fucking level. I always tell him, and I say this with like Tony Robbins ain't got shit in Tah. Like the level, I'm serious, the level of coaching that. I mean, if you listen to this all the way through, I'm sure you can tell the level of intricacy through the processes that he brings people through is really deep. And this is just him having a conversation with me. When you're working with people like in person, it's like a whole nother level, seeing you support them in navigating it. So I'm a super fan. Always been.
Thank you. I received that, Stephanie. Thank you. You've said that to me before, and I'm like, and the blushing that comes online when you say these things to me, I appreciate it. And I'm in a position right now in my life where I recognize that if I don't honor the gifts that I have, I will show other people how to hide theirs. And that's what I was taught for a lot of my life, was to dull my light. I'm really, really, really good at what I do. I'm awesome at what I do. I'm not good. I'm awesome at what I do. And like, I can feel it in my body right now, the resistance to saying it, and I'm doing it anyway. And this is the courageousness that I was talking about. And, EmotionALL, like all of the depth that we're talking about here is I'm not going to be teaching you all of these deep, intricate situations that can overwhelm a person. This is me speaking from my knowledge base. I'm going to take you through step by step, really, really basic things to start to learn how to navigate
And integrate it,
where you are, and then integrate it with your day-to-day life.
which is more
That's
important.
more important than anything, is to be able to integrate it with the day-to-day life. And so that's the important space. That's the wonder space, is to be able to integrate these things with your family, integrate it with your money, right? Because money and emotions, come on, we talked about that. We talked about that at the live event. Money and emotions, they're woven in together. Emotions can't be taken out of anything. They're all here because we are human beings and we're involved in an emotional space. And so it's really important. And thank you for that reflection, Stephanie. I do appreciate it. And I also wanted to say, this is what a part of what we teach at the Condor approach. And
the Condor approach, for those, did you share what that is? It's you want to share?
I can, sure. The Condor approach is,
I did that too.
The Condor approach is a psychedelic informed integration coaching methodology that we teach to people so that they can actually coach themselves in integrating their experiences before, during, and after psychedelic experiences. And so we come back from psychedelic experiences different than we were. We come back from every experience different than we were. But the profundity, I love that word, the profundity of the changes that happen with people in psychedelic experiences, or any transformational experience, people go back to old spaces, they go back to their environments and stuff, and they're not actively integrating, right? They're not doing it from a space of their own awareness. They're doing it from a space of I'm just going to fall into it. And so this is where the integration coaching style that we have is about allowing and then nudging, right? And so remember, the nudge is the masculine. You allow things to happen and then you nudge. You allow things to happen and you nudge. Otherwise, if you allow things to happen, the world will nudge you. And we live in a very hyper masculinized world where everybody else will tell you what to do and how to do it, and it will affect your integration. And so integration is not an optional space. We're always integrating, but how we integrate, that's the option. That's what we teach. And we have what we call the 4 Ins process: intake, intention, in the space, and integration. And we do a 3-day on that. And oh wow. And it's a 3-day, and that's what we're moving into now. So it was a 5-day before only. We do the 5-day for coach for people who want to be coaches, and the 3-day is for people who just want to come and experience it and learn these concepts and stuff that some of the concepts that I've been talking about today are going to be embedded in the Condor approach. And it's really, really awesome. And we can also take some bread off of that for folks too. I'll
leave the links in the show notes or wherever the video lives so that people can check it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, girl.
I so appreciate you. This was amazing. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Peace.